The crippled girl was sold to the alpha vampire, but he demanded they call her queen. The winter sun hung low over the village of Greyhaven, its light pale and brittle like old bones. Snow swirled through the streets, biting at the skin of those brave enough to walk outside. Elara huddled under a frayed cloak, her crutches scraping against the frozen stones, her breath forming tiny clouds in the cold air. Her small frame, thin and fragile, made her almost invisible to the villagers who passed, their eyes filled with pity or disgust. She had been crippled since childhood, a cruel twist of fate that left her legs weak and unsteady. Her father often muttered that she was a burden on the family. And now, desperate and broke, he had made a choice that would change her life forever. The marketplace was loud with shouts and laughter, but today the noise felt distant to Elara. She had been sold. A nobleman, or perhaps a stranger, had come to the village, offering gold in exchange for her. Her mother had wept silently in the corner, her hands trembling, while her father's face had been cold and set. Elara had been too shocked to speak, too afraid to protest. The weight of her fate settled like ice in her chest. Her escorts were silent men cloaked in black. They moved with a predator's grace, their boots making no sound on the frozen ground. Elara followed, each step sending a jolt of pain through her legs. She had never left Greyhaven before, had never seen the wide world beyond the snow-covered forests and stone cottages. Now she was to be taken to a place she did not know, to a man she had only heard about in whispered rumors. "Do not fear, child," one of the men said, his voice low and calm. "You belong to Kale now, Pit, the Alpha of the North. His word is law, base. His will is life or death." Elara shivered. She had heard the stories. Kale, the vampire lord, was said to be merciless, ruling his coven with iron and blood. Men and women disappeared without a trace in the northern lands, and none dared question his power. Yet even among those who feared him, there was a whisper of something else, a name carried in awe: the Queen. The carriage that awaited them at the edge of the village was unlike anything Elara had ever seen. Its black wood gleamed even in the gray light, silver carvings of wolves and moons tracing its sides. The doors opened silently, as if the carriage itself were alive, and the cloaked men helped her inside. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic rhythm she could not control. Inside, the air was warmer, scented with something faintly sweet, like night-blooming flowers. Velvet curtains hung from the windows, and a single candle flickered in the corner. Elara sank into the soft seat, clutching her cloak around her. She did not speak. Words felt useless. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. The journey was long, though the carriage moved silently and swiftly. Elara watched the landscape change from villages to dark forests, the trees tall and twisted, their bare branches like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. Something about the woods made her uneasy, but she did not dare speak. The cloaked men only watched her, their expressions unreadable. As night fell, the carriage came to a stop before a great castle rising from the cliffs like a jagged crown. Its walls were black stone, cold and forbidding, and towers spiraled toward the sky like spears. Windows glowed with a pale light, and the air carried a strange electric chill. Elara felt her stomach tighten.
This was Kale's domain. She was here.
First, the doors opened and the men escorted her inside. The halls were vast and silent, lined with statues of wolves carved from obsidian, their eyes seeming to follow her as she walked. Candles flickered in sconces, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Every step she took echoed, a hollow reminder of how small and fragile she felt. Then she saw him. Kale. He stood at the top of a grand staircase, tall and imposing, his form draped in black. His eyes were crimson, glowing faintly in the candlelight, and they held her gaze as if he could see straight into her soul. Bet. His expression was calm, almost curious, and yet there was something in it that made her pulse quicken, a power she could feel pressing against her chest, heavy and intoxicating.
"You are here," he said, his voice low and smooth, echoing through the hall.
They tell me you are broken. Elara flinched at the word. She had never been called that aloud, not by anyone but herself. Her legs trembled beneath her cloak, and she looked down, ashamed. "Yet I demand," Kale continued, stepping down the stairs with a grace that seemed inhuman, "that you are called Queen." Bay. Not servant. Not possession. Queen. Elara blinked, confusion and fear swirling inside her. Queen? She stammered. Yes, Kale said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You will sit beside me as queen of this house. You will carry my name with respect, and the coven will honor you as such. Do you understand? Elara could only nod, her throat dry. She did not understand. Why her? Why would the fearsome alpha demand her to be his queen, when she was crippled, small, and weak? Kale regarded her silently for a long moment, his crimson eyes piercing through her uncertainty. Then he spoke again, softer, this time. Do not mistake my demand for mercy, little queen. Power is not given, but it is claimed, even by those who think themselves unworthy. The words unsettled her. There was no warmth in them, no comfort, only truth. Her life had changed forever, and she would have to find a way to survive in a world that would test her every step. That night, in the vast darkness of Kale's castle, Elara lay in a room prepared for her. The bed was large, soft, and alien to her senses. Candles burned along the walls, casting flickering light across tapestries depicting battles, wolves, and moons. She pressed her hands to her knees, feeling the weakness of her legs, the weight of her smallness, and the enormity of what awaited her. A knock echoed at the door. One of Kale's attendants entered, silent as a shadow, and spoke in a quiet voice. He will see you in the morning, Queen. Elara's lips parted in surprise at the title. Queen. The word felt heavy on her tongue, like a stone she had yet to lift. She wanted to deny it, to shrink back into herself, but something in her chest stirred, a small, dangerous spark of defiance. As she drifted into an uneasy sleep, she dreamed of crimson eyes and silver moons, of wolves with glowing eyes running through endless forests. She saw herself walking beside Kale, not as a servant, not as a broken girl, but as a figure of power and command. Breaths. The vision frightened her and thrilled her in equal measure. When she awoke, the sun had not yet risen. The halls of the castle were silent, save for the soft echo of her crutches on stone. She moved slowly toward the grand doors, unsure of what awaited her. The air carried a strange scent, like earth after rain mixed with iron, and she felt the pulse of power thrumming beneath the castle's walls.
In the main hall, Kale awaited her.
He did not smile, but the faint tilt of his head suggested curiosity. You survived the night, he said. Good. Survival is the first lesson of a queen. The second is understanding the world you now rule.
Elara's heart pounded, fear and excitement mingling in her chest.
Psst. She wanted to run, to flee from the grandeur and the danger, but her legs would not let her. And yet, she did not run. Despair. Kale stepped closer, and the warmth of his presence was both comforting and terrifying. "You will learn," he said softly, almost a whisper. "That being called queen is not about crowns or titles. It is about the strength of your heart, the clarity of your mind, and the courage to face the darkness." She did not know if she had courage. She did not know if she had strength. But she knew, with a certainty that startled her, that she could not go back. She had been sold, and her fate was now bound to this castle, to this man, to this life. And as Kael turned away, his cloak swirling like liquid night, she realized that her journey had only just begun. Outside, the wind howled through the towers, carrying the promise of danger, power, and something far more uncertain, a spark of destiny. "Elara." The crippled girl sold to the alpha vampire closed her eyes and whispered a word she was still learning to own. Elara awoke to the cold light of dawn filtering through the tall, narrow windows of the castle. Her body ached in places she hadn't known could ache. But it was not the pain of her legs she feared most. It was the unknown. The castle loomed around her like a living thing, its shadows shifting in the morning light. The halls she had wandered in her first night now felt vast and endless, and she could hear voices moving somewhere far above, soft murmurs she could not understand. Her first steps outside her chamber were slow and measured. Her crutches clicked against the stone floor, echoing through the empty corridor. Despite her weakness, she felt something stir within her, a small spark of defiance, the faintest whisper of courage. "I am a queen now," she reminded herself. "I must learn." When she entered the grand hall, Kea was already there, standing by one of the tall windows. The crimson glow of his eyes met hers instantly, a silent challenge she could not look away from. He did not smile. His presence, immense and silent, made the air itself feel heavier. Yet instead of fear, Elara felt something else, a strange pull, like gravity tugging her toward him. "Bess, you have awakened?" he said, his voice smooth and deliberate, carrying both authority and curiosity. "Good. Today you begin your lessons." Elara swallowed, nodding. Bah. She had expected lessons of manners or titles, but Kael's next words surprised her. "Not crowns, not ceremonies," he said, moving closer, his steps soundless on the cold stone. "Power is understanding. To survive as queen, you must know the world around you, its dangers, its secrets, its truths. Bay." He extended a hand, not to lead her, but to test her. "Do you wish to walk, queen? Or shall I carry you?" Elara shook her head, gripping her crutches tighter. Her legs trembled, but she straightened her back. "I will walk," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper, yet it held a strength that startled even her. Kael's crimson eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing her will. "Best." Then he nodded. The first lesson is observation. The castle itself is alive with secrets. You must see them before they see you. He led her through hallways lined with portraits of long-dead vampires, their eyes following every movement, their expressions frozen in silent judgment. The air smelled faintly of old stone, iron, and something sweeter she could not name. Shadows stretched long across the floors, curling around corners and rising along walls as if they had minds of their own. "Everything here has a purpose," Kael said, his voice low. "Nothing moves without reason. You will learn to watch, to understand what others hide. Elara nodded again, though her mind struggled to take it all in. She had never been clever in the ways of politics or power. In Greyhaven, cleverness had been unnecessary. Hiding and obeying had been enough. Here, it would not. Base. As they reached the library, Cale gestured to the tall shelves. Books of all sizes, ancient and leather-bound, filled the room. Bright. Some hummed faintly with magic. Others radiated cold like a winter's night. Knowledge is the sharpest weapon, Queen, Cale said. But it must be wielded carefully. Do not mistake ignorance for innocence, pet. One wrong word, one wrong step, and you will regret it. Elara stepped forward, running her fingers along the spines. Some titles she could not even read. The letters shimmered and shifted on the pages. Yet, in that moment she felt the first flicker of understanding. Ah, perhaps she could learn. Perhaps she could survive. Perhaps she could even command respect. Their lessons continued for hours, Cale's gaze never leaving her, always assessing, always challenging. He asked her questions about the castle, about the woods surrounding it, about the creatures rumored to lurk in the night. He tested her memory, her reasoning, and, quietly, her courage. Most would fear what they cannot see, he said, but the Queen must see more than others.
The Queen must know the unknown, embrace it, and make it her own.
The flicker of shadows across the hallways, the slight tremor in the candle flames, the way the walls seemed to shift when no one was looking. By evening, she was exhausted, yet something in her chest pulsed with determination. She was beginning to understand the weight of her title. It was in the quiet moments, when Cale left her alone in the library, that she first felt the stirrings of loneliness. She was surrounded by knowledge, by power, by secrets, yet utterly isolated. The castle was vast, and though servants moved silently through the halls, none spoke to her without caution. She realized how small she had been in her old life, yet how small the world could make her feel even now. Night fell, and with it came the first test of what Cale had spoken of. A cry echoed through the castle halls, sharp, sudden, and full of fear. Elara's heart leapt into her throat. She knew instinctively that danger had arrived, though she had no idea what form it would take. Cale appeared at her side, silent as a shadow, crimson eyes blazing.
Do not move, he commanded, his voice low and steady.
Observe. Learn. The Queen must see before she acts.
Through the windows she could see movement in the snow outside.
Breath. Figures cloaked in darkness skittered among the trees, their shapes twisted and unnatural. Wolves, or creatures like wolves, with eyes glowing silver in the moonlight.
Alara's breath caught. She had never seen anything like them.
They are testing us, Cale said. They will probe for weakness. You must not show fear. Elara's hands trembled on her crutches, but she stood firm. The creatures drew closer, silent and patient, dead. Cale's presence beside her was steady, a force that both reassured and frightened her. Then, one of the shadows lunged. Cale moved like lightning, a blur of motion, and intercepted the attack before it could reach her. The creature hissed and recoiled, retreating into the forest.
Cale's crimson eyes met hers. Do you see? He asked.
Even in the presence of fear, a queen must remain unmoved. You will face threats every day. Not just from creatures, but from those who wish to control you, to test your resolve, to break you. Do you understand?
I
I understand, she whispered. Kale's gaze softened slightly, though it remained intense. Good. You have potential. But potential is not enough. Strength must be forged. He extended a hand, and this time, Elara took it. But because she needed to be led, but because she wanted to feel the anchor of someone who had survived centuries of darkness. Kyle guided her toward the balcony overlooking the forest. The wind was sharp, biting, yet invigorating. The silver moon cast a pale glow across the snow, and for a moment, Elara felt free, though she was still bound by duty, fear, and uncertainty. The night belongs to the shadows, Kale said, his voice almost a whisper in the wind. But the queen belongs to herself. Never forget that. Hours passed, and the creatures did not return. Elara was left to ponder his words. She realized that being queen was not about titles or crowns. It was about seeing the world clearly, knowing danger before it found you, and standing firm when others would falter. She felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, the first true stirrings of confidence in her heart. As dawn approached, Elara sat on the balcony, watching the first light touch the snowy forest. The cold bit at her fingers. But she welcomed it. It reminded her that she was alive, that she was learning, and that she was no longer the helpless girl from Greyhaven. She was queen. Fragile, yes, but growing stronger with every passing hour. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, eyes glowed. Silent, patient, hungry. The shadows had not forgotten her. The night would return, testing her, challenging her, shaping her. Elara pressed her hand to her chest and whispered a word she was beginning to own. Queen. She did not know what awaited her next, but she knew she would face it. Not as a crippled girl, not as a frightened child, but as a queen rising from the shadows, learning to command the darkness as much as it sought to command her. The castle was silent, but silence in Kale's halls was never simple. Shadows seemed to twist and lean, creeping along the edges of the rooms, whispering secrets no one dared speak aloud.
Elara walked carefully, crutches clicking softly against the cold stone, her eyes sharp, scanning every corner as Kale had taught her.
She was learning to see the unseen, to feel the currents of power flowing through the castle, through its walls, its servants, and even through him. Kale was already in the library when she arrived, his crimson eyes fixed on a large ancient map spread across the table. He did not look at her immediately. Instead, he studied the paths of forests, rivers, and mountains with a careful intensity that made her chest tighten. The alpha vampire carried himself like a storm barely restrained, quiet, dark, and full of force.
Sit, he said finally, without turning.
His voice carried authority, but there was a faint softness in it, meant only for her.
Elara obeyed, balancing her crutches beside her as she lowered herself onto the chair.
You are improving, Kale said, finally looking at her. But improvement is not enough. But you must understand more than the walls around you. You must understand hearts and fears. She knew what he meant. A queen could not simply rule through force. She must read the intentions of others, discern truth from lies, detect danger before it struck.
And yet the task seemed impossible. She had never been clever or cunning.
Her childhood had been spent hiding from life, not mastering it. Teach me, she whispered, and for the first time her voice carried a note of determination she had not known she possessed. Pay Kael's crimson eyes softened slightly, just enough that she noticed it. Very well. Today you will meet the council. The council of Kael's most trusted lieutenants was held in a great hall lined with obsidian pillars, their surfaces etched with the shapes of wolves and moons. Band. The vampire lords and ladies regarded her with caution, some with thinly veiled amusement, others with curiosity. Do not speak unless spoken to, Kael instructed quietly, his hand brushing her shoulder. The touch was fleeting, yet it sent warmth through her chest. Do not imagine meaning in it, she reminded herself. It is guidance, nothing more. Ilara bowed her head slightly, steadying herself. When Kael introduced her as queen, the council murmured. Some voices held respect, others suspicion. The Alpha's hand on her shoulder was not just support, it was a declaration. Beth. She was no longer just a girl sold by her family. She carried a title that demanded attention, obedience, and caution. The council discussed matters of the Northern Coven, borders threatened by rival clans, dwindling resources, and rumors of creatures gathering in the forests. Ilara listened, absorbing every word. She did not understand everything, but she asked questions when Kael gave her a chance. Slowly, she realized that her questions revealed more than ignorance. They revealed curiosity, courage, and intelligence. Some of the lords glanced at her differently after that, respect creeping into their expressions. After the council, Kael led her to the balcony overlooking the castle gardens. The moon hung low and silver in the sky, casting its light over the snow-covered ground. Wolves moved in the shadows below, unseen but present, guardians of the lands he ruled. Bah, you did well, Kael said. His voice was softer now, almost intimate. You are beginning to understand. But a queen is more than knowledge. Psst. Psh, psh. She must also herself, her weaknesses, her fears, her heart. Ilara turned to him, the wind tangling her hair, the cold biting her cheeks. Beck. I do not know if I am strong enough, she admitted. I have always been weak, but my legs, my body, everything about me has been a limitation. Kael's gaze pierced her, but there was no judgment, only honesty. Strength is not measured by the body alone. Your courage, your mind, your will, those are your weapons. Do not underestimate them. Do not underestimate yourself. The word stirred something inside her, a flame she had not known existed. For the first time in her life, she felt possibility instead of despair. She wanted to believe him, wanted to reach for that strength he claimed she had. Days passed, and with each passing day, Ilara grew. She learned the paths of the castle, the habits of its servants, and the subtle cues of Kael's companions. Bess. She studied the ancient books in the library, some of which hummed faintly with magic she could feel but not yet understand. Each lesson tested her patience, her courage, and her mind. But each lesson brought her closer to the title she now carried, Queen. But power is never without cost, and danger never far away. One evening, while exploring a corridor lined with tall mirrors, Ilara glimpsed a shadow detach itself from the corner of her vision. She froze, instinct taking over. The figure moved like mist, silent and quick. Before she could call out, Kael appeared beside her, his presence a shield. They have come, he said, his crimson eyes blazing. The rival clan tests our defenses again. She had faced creatures before, but this time it was different. These were not mindless beasts. They were cunning, patient, and deliberate. Kael's hand brushed hers, guiding her behind a pillar as the shadow passed. and for a brief moment she felt something more than fear. Trust. She trusted him to protect her, to teach her how to survive, to guide her through this darkness. When the threat had passed, Kale led her back to the balcony. "Do you understand now?" he asked.
Being queen is not about standing above danger. It is about standing within it, seeing it, and choosing how to face it.
Elara nodded, breathless, yet a small thrill ran through her. She was learning.
She was surviving. She was
beginning to rise. But survival was not enough. Elara noticed the subtle ways the council members began to test her. A whispered comment here, a slight challenge there. Kale had warned her that even those who obeyed must be watched. The queen must always see more than others. And Elara saw. She observed the flickers of doubt, the glimpses of ambition in the eyes of those who once dismissed her. Boss. One night, Kale summoned her to the inner courtyard. The snow was deep, and the moon hung low, casting a silver light across the ground. Wolves padded silently around the edges, their eyes glowing faintly. Kale moved beside her, silent and patient, his crimson gaze fixed on the shadows. "You are ready for your first true test," he said, his voice low and steady. "Tonight you will face them. Bet. Not as a girl, not as someone weak or small. You will face them as a queen."
Elara's chest tightened.
Fear pressed against her heart like a heavy weight, but beneath it, a spark of determination glowed. She had come so far. Breath. She could not falter now. The shadows moved before her eyes, figures cloaked in darkness. The rival clan had sent their assassins testing the castle, testing her, testing Kale. But Elara did not run. Inspiration. She moved with the guidance he had given, observing, listening, understanding their patterns, predicting their movements.
She called out instructions quietly, guiding the guards and the wolves.
Psst. Her mind was sharp, her voice steady. She was no longer just a passenger in this world. She was a queen in command. Kale watched silently from the shadows, letting her lead. Best. And in that moment, Elara realized something she had never known. She was not weak. She was not broken. Shoo. Shoo. She was growing, rising into the power that had been demanded of her. The battle ended before it truly began. The assassins withdrew, unseen but understood. Elara had survived, guided by courage, intelligence, and the lessons Kale had given her. And though her body ached, her heart was alive with something new. Confidence. Kale stepped forward, silent, and placed a hand on her shoulder. Bess. You have done well, little queen. But do not mistake this as mastery.
It is only the beginning. Elara nodded, breathless.
She did not need him to tell her this. She felt it. The path ahead was long, full of shadows, danger, and unknown trials. But she was ready to face them. She had to be. As she looked out over the snowy forest, the moonlight shimmering across the treetops, she realized she was no longer just the crippled girl from Greyhaven. She was a queen in shadow, learning to command darkness and light alike. And somewhere deep within the castle, a whisper carried across the halls, a warning, a promise, a challenge. The queen walks among us, and her first true trial approaches. Elara pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the spark of courage and the steady beat of her own heart. Kale's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was no distance between them. Only acknowledgement, only understanding. Only a bond forged in shadow, trust, and the promise of something greater. The night was far from over. The forest waited. The shadows waited. And Elara, the queen in training, was ready to meet them all. The wind tore across the cliffs surrounding the castle, carrying snow and whispers of danger. Elara stood on the balcony, her crutches planted firmly on the stone floor, her cloak billowing around her. She was no longer the frightened, crippled girl who had been sold by her family. Pay. She was a queen in the making, and tonight her power and courage would be tested like never before. Kael stood beside her, silent, a presence as steady as the mountains. His crimson eyes scanned the forest below, where the rival clan's forces had gathered. Shadows moved with intention, not mindless beasts, but calculated hunters. The moonlight glinted off their weapons, and their silver eyes burned with determination.
You are ready, Kael said quietly, his voice low but firm.
Bay.
But do not forget, strength alone is not enough.
Bay. You must see with your mind and heart. Lead them, queen, and they will follow. Bess. Elara nodded, her heart pounding. Fear surged, but beneath it was a calm certainty. She had learned to watch, to anticipate, to understand the currents of power around her. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. She stepped back into the great hall, where the castle's guards and wolves waited. The lords and ladies of Kael's council were already in position, their faces a mix of anticipation and respect. They had seen her grow, observed her learning, and now they followed her command. "Tonight," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "we do not fight as alpha or servants.
We fight as one. The forest may hide their shadows, but we are stronger together."
We will protect this castle, this coven, and everything it represents. Her words echoed in the hall, bold and confident, panned. The council members straightened, wolves bristled, and even Kael allowed a faint tilt of approval in his expression. As they moved toward the outer walls, Elara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her title settle on her shoulders. Queen. The word no longer scared her. It felt like a shield, a mantle of strength she had claimed through trials, observation, and courage. The rival clan attacked as the moon reached its peak. The specter. Shadows leapt from the trees, moving like living smoke, testing the castle's defenses. Elara's heart pounded, but her mind was clear. Bay. She guided the guards, instructed the wolves, and anticipated every move the intruders made. Kael fought alongside her, swift and deadly, a storm of crimson and shadow, but he let her lead. Every command she gave was followed without question. She realized with a strange thrill that she had earned their trust. She was not just surviving. She was ruling. Bah! One of the rival assassins broke through the outer line, cloaked in darkness and carrying a strange glowing weapon. Elara's pulse quickened. This was the test she had been preparing for. Kael moved to intercept, but she raised a hand. "I can handle this," she said firmly. Kael's crimson eyes met hers, searching, testing. Then he stepped back, allowing her to face the threat. Her breath came steady, her mind sharp. She focused on the patterns, the movements, and the weaknesses of her opponent. With careful precision, she directed a group of guards, anticipating where the assassin would strike next. Brace. The glowing weapon faltered under her strategy. The intruder forced back into the shadows. Elara's heart raced, but she did not waver. She had learned the strength within herself. Her mind, her courage, her title. She had become the queen she was meant to be. When the battle finally ended, the forest was silent once more. The rival clan had retreated, defeated by strategy, courage, and unity. Elara's legs ached, her arms burned from holding herself upright, but a quiet triumph settled in her chest. She had done it. She had led. She had protected the castle. And those she now ruled. Kale stepped forward, silent as ever, and for the first time he allowed a small smile.
You have done more than I expected, he said, his voice low, almost gentle.
Breath.
You have faced shadows and fear, and you stood as a true queen. Elara met his gaze, crimson meeting human, mortal meeting immortal.
There was something unspoken in that look. Respect, acknowledgement, and something deeper. Something she felt in the corners of her heart, but could not name yet.
Thank you, she whispered.
Bed. Not for saving her, but for teaching her, for guiding her, for believing in her. Ko reached out, brushing his hand against hers. The touch was fleeting, but full of meaning. Do not thank me, Queen, he said softly. Thank yourself. You earned this. Despair. The castle, the forest, the moonlit cliffs, all seemed to hold their breath, acknowledging the transformation that had taken place. Elara, once fragile and fearful, had risen through courage, wisdom, and determination. Bah. She was no longer the girl sold into shadow. She was the queen of the Northern Coven, and the Alpha beside her recognized it fully. In the quiet aftermath, KL led her to the balcony once more. They looked out over the snow-covered forest, the wolves moving silently among the trees. The night was calm, but the air still hummed with power and life. You have grown, Kale said finally, his voice almost a whisper. Stronger than most mortals? Stronger than many vampires. You have learned to stand within the darkness without losing yourself. Elara turned to him, her chest full of emotion. I could not have done this without your guidance, she admitted. Kale's crimson eyes softened, but he did not move closer. You did this yourself, little queen. I only showed you the way. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the wind carrying their thoughts across the cliffs. Elara realized that she no longer feared him. She no longer felt small or helpless. She had claimed her title, her power, and her place, and in doing so she had begun to understand something else, that trust and courage were as vital as strength, and that even in darkness a heart could shine. Suddenly, a soft movement in the shadows caught her attention. A figure stepped into the moonlight, one of the surviving council members, a young vampire who had once doubted her. He bowed low. Queen Elara, he said, his voice respectful. Your leadership saved us tonight. The Coven owes you its life. Elara nodded, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. She had earned respect, not through fear or charm, but through action and wisdom. The word queen was no longer a command imposed upon her. Bas, it was a truth she had claimed. Kale watched her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. For the first time, there was no shadow of doubt in his gaze, only acknowledgement, respect, and something more profound, something that stirred in the quiet spaces between them. As dawn approached, painting the sky in soft golds and pinks, Elara and Kale stood side by side on the balcony. The snow shimmered like silver, and the world seemed momentarily still. The night had tested her. The rival clan had fallen, and triumphed. She had survived, led, and triumphed. She had become the queen she was meant to be. Cale turned to her, his hand brushing hers once more. You have earned your place, Elara. The castle, the coven, and even my own trust are yours. Do you understand what that means?
Elara met his crimson gaze, feeling a depth of connection she had never known before.
But I understand, she said softly. It means responsibility. Pay, courage, and the strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Kael's expression softened, and for a fleeting moment he looked almost mortal, a man shaped by centuries of power, guilt, and loss, yet capable of hope. And it means something more, he whispered. It means that even the Alpha has found someone to rely upon, to trust, to care for. Bea. She had never imagined such words, never dared to hope for such a connection. And yet, standing beside Kahel, she felt a quiet truth settle within her heart. She was no longer afraid of the darkness, the shadows, or the world beyond the castle walls. She was the queen, not just in title, but in spirit. The first rays of sunlight touched the cliffs, casting a warm glow over the snow and the castle. Wolves padded silently among the trees, their eyes watching, loyal and vigilant. And in the quiet, powerful stillness of dawn, Elara realized that the trials were over. The shadow had tested her, the forest had challenged her, the rival clan had confronted her, and she had risen. Kael's hand found hers again, this time holding it not as alpha and queen, but as equals, partners in a bond forged through shadow, trust, and courage. You are my queen, he said softly, and my heart belongs to you.
Elara pressed her hand to his, her eyes shining.
And you are my alpha, she whispered. But more than that, you are mine to trust. The wind carried their words across the cliffs, and the castle seemed to hum in approval. The Northern Coven had a new queen, one born of courage, wisdom, and heart. And the alpha vampire who demanded she be called queen had found redemption in her strength, just as she had found her own. Together they stood against the rising sun, rulers of a realm forged from shadow, trust, and love. The trials of the night were over, but their story had only just begun. And in that golden dawn, the world felt infinite, alive, and full of possibility. The queen had risen, the alpha had found his equal, and a new chapter of their legend was ready to unfold.